Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. We are recording this right after the holiday season, so we hope you all had a wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year, all of the whole holiday season. We had an awesome time here in Cincinnati with our family. We want to welcome you back to 2025. We're still in season 5 of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. Our guest today is Justin Clark. He's the VP of Business Development at EVI. If you don't know who EVI is, they're a distribution company. So they own like 29 different distributors across the country, and they own some other companies in the industry too. But they're a large corporation that's focused on buying these smaller companies and then elevating them, making them better at what they do. So they're trying to buy current unique distribution assets and companies like that, and then injecting talent and resources into them to help make them better, to serve their community in a better way. So it's going to be a real interesting conversation. Justin has been in the industry about 3 years, but he has distribution experience outside the industry too. Mm-hmm. So we have a great conversation around the concept of just distribution in general and how can our industry improve the distribution network. So whether you're a distributor or a laundromat owner, I think you're going to want to stick around for this conversation because he has a lot of really great perspective. And lastly, Justin is I'll call him kind of a leadership guru, if you will. I mean, I followed him on LinkedIn for a couple of years now, and he's just a phenomenal human, but a elite leader in a lot of ways. So if you see yourself as a leader and you want to get better at leadership, he drops some significant leadership nuggets in this episode as well.
But before we get into the episode, we do want to take a moment to spotlight one of our services, which is the Laundromat Millionaire Insurance Program. With the start of a new year, it's often a time to look at those insurance policies. Do you have the coverage that you need? Are you paying the right price? So if you are questioning whether your insurance coverage is where it should be or whether your policies are what they should be, definitely check out the Laundromat Millionaire Insurance Program at laundromatmillionaire.com/insurance. And you can request an evaluation of your current policies and a quote today. But let's get on with the episode.
And what if we were able to take the best of each of our companies? What could we do for our customer base? And if we make it about the customer and not about the distributor or the salesperson, that's where you really get the cool synergy and the upside. But as we keep the end user the focus of what we're doing, how we're doing, why we're doing, there's areas that we can do a better job.
All right. So Justin, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you.
Yeah, Carla, nice to see you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I am honored, man. I feel like I say this a lot because I use social media to find rock stars in our industry and out of our industry. And you're another example of that. We've been following each other for a little while now on LinkedIn, I think specifically. And just for the audience, Justin is a rock star in the industry and he works with a distributor, but he leads an entire team. So Justin, before we even jump in too much, can you just give a brief introduction of who you are, what you do, why you came into this industry? I know you've been in the industry a few years, which I actually think that's awesome. I want to hear your outsider perspective. And then now that you've been doing this for 2 or 3 years, your insider perspective. And we'd love to dig into that a little bit before we even get started today.
Well, perfect. Well, first off, you mentioned you were honored, Dave. I guess I have to start. So I got into this industry 29 months ago. And I say 29 months because every month's important to me because of the amount I've learned so quickly. I can almost attribute it to different months in the industry. But my very first month, literally month 1, when I started attempting to understand the laundry and the laundry equipment world, I went to Google, I went to podcasts, I went to YouTube, and you were all over those areas. And so I started paying a little bit of attention to you, and you were gracious enough, when you didn't know me from anyone, you sent me a copy of your book.
Really? I don't even remember that.
Yeah, you sent it to me as a new guy in the industry, not knowing anything about me. And so it's really cool to be 28 months later and getting to be on this podcast with you. So thank you. I'm honored to get to be here.
Well, you're very welcome.
So previously, I've been here for not quite 3 years in the laundry equipment world. My previous 15 years, I spent in janitorial and packaging distribution equipment. Okay. So still distributing what some people would look at as not very exciting products. You think about laundromats and laundry equipment, and you compare that to toilet paper and chicken. Laundry equipment might be an upgrade. So
the thing I found interesting, just to interrupt you right off the bat, the thing I find interesting, Justin, is
my experience from afar, and I do not have experience in distribution, but I've talked to a lot of people like yourself, so especially recently in the last 5 years, that have come into our industry from a distribution perspective, that have distribution experience in other industries, restaurants, and all these different things. It's amazing to me. I have no experience outside this industry, right, other than telephone communication. So it's amazing to me how quickly people like yourself who have distribution experience come into our industry, and you see all these opportunities for improving distribution. Did you see that? Do you still see that?
Yeah, it's, distribution in general. There are upsides for customer experience improvement. So if you go across different industries, you're going to find distributor similar problems that take place between them, where there is a disconnect between what the manufacturer wants their solution to be to the end user versus what the distributor sees their ability to actually deliver that to the end user. And so in distribution, the laundry industry, it is different. But on the distribution side, there are so many parallels, which we've been fortunate to be able to take from learning from that other industry and move them into the laundry equipment world. I can tell you my biggest fear when I came into this industry was I knew nothing about laundry equipment. And as you all know, it's a very, very niche, tight-knit group.
It is very nuanced too.
And
Very.
the concern was it's tight, it's niche, it's nuanced. How would I be received?
Yeah.
Because without the expertise, me being a new person in the industry, if people didn't receive me well, it was going to be a really, really hard gig to have influence or be able to make a difference.
Yeah.
What I've been blown away by is the laundry equipment nerds, as I call them, or as you call yourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Is you absolutely love anyone that wants to get in this industry and wants to bring passion into it. So I showed up in this industry, high energy, passionate,
Yeah.
and was accepted. I was almost not just accepted, but appreciated that, hey, you want to learn, you want to spend time with it. And the amount of information that's been given to me from people like yourselves and other experts in the industry, it's overwhelming to where I love it. I don't have a laundromat yet, but I know that industry would welcome me in open arms to help me learn. And I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah. Wow. That's exciting. And I will tell you, maybe right time, right place. God might have a little bit of work in this, but man, I tell you, I've been in the industry 15 years. I feel pretty comfortable and a little sad saying that 7 or 8 years ago, I'm not sure that would have been the case. We, as a collective industry, were not as welcoming to the outside world. We were very closed off. Good old boys club is the general.
I think even towards each other, like I feel like
For sure.
maybe it's different. You're not an operator. And I feel like that's something that's changing too, is like when we first started into the industry, all the owner operators were very guarded about their numbers, like almost like they're looking at everybody else as like you could be a potential competitor. Or I don't know if it's that, or maybe they were even like embarrassed, like that they wanted to be perceived that they were doing better than they even were, like in sharing too many details. You might see behind the curtain of their business or whatever, or steal tricks. I don't know.
No.
But I think there's definitely been a change and a shift in owners really realizing they can learn a lot from each other and that those friendships and that sharing is very powerful. And I think that's kind of a shift in our industry that you've come at just the right time for.
I'll speak to that a little bit further, and then I want to jump into you more. But I'll go as far as I don't want to put blame on anyone because we're all responsible for that 70-year history. My observation from afar, having many distributors who are personal friends now. My distributor in Cincinnati is one of my best friends. And I can tell you that when you speak to the OGs, the people that have been doing this 50, 60 years, there are exceptions to everything. So I'm not putting everyone in a box here. But as a general rule, local equipment distributors drove this industry. And they drove the education, the knowledge, or the lack thereof for the entire length of our history, and still do, and still have a responsibility, I think, to do that. But I think one of the mistakes that most distributors were making as recently as 10 years ago is I think they were actually encouraging. Carla's describing, they were telling their customers, for lack of a better term, hey, it's not in your best interest to talk to other owners, right? That you need to keep your secret sauce or not so secret sauce to yourself, and whatever you learn. I think I'm partially responsible for that. I came in the industry with a big mouth, and I was like, hey guys, you know what? That ain't okay, right? And I'll be the first to step up and share everything I know. Now, this is before we had a podcast, things like that. So I'm not saying I was singularly responsible for it, but it always takes a few people. I think there was probably a few hundred of us that kind of stepped out maybe 10 years ago on old CLA forums and things like that, and started to share pretty openly and honestly with people. And even back then, 10 years ago, I had more people discouraging and telling me that as I was actively doing it, I was a fool and I was going to destroy my business and blah, blah, blah. And I just refused to listen to them. I just have that abundance mindset. And I was just like, I just don't believe that to be true. I see where you're coming from. But my point is, we have evolved a long ways. I have no doubt whatsoever that we have attracted you to this industry because I'm sure you did your homework on us. And you probably saw a different type of industry than you would 8 or 10 years ago. And that's why you were so well received. But I'm going to tie a big bow around this conversation and just say I'm excited because a big part of what we do is for you to attract people like you to this industry because we need more of you.
Well, I'm pumped to be here. It's the upside and opportunity for that end user experience is massive. And we'll get back talking about that a little through distribution and just in general. But as we keep the end user the focus of what we're doing, how we're doing, why we're doing, there's areas that we can do a better job.
Whether you already have a laundromat or are looking to get into the laundry industry, everyone needs proper drainage. We use HM Company drain troughs. Their drain troughs were first created in 1991, and they have been the leading drain trough manufacturer ever since. They're made in the USA, and their drain troughs are fully customizable to meet your needs. That's why we've used them ever since entering the industry. They're easy to clean for our staff and plenty sturdy when we need to walk on them when servicing our washers. With the ability to span up to 25 feet, our troughs rarely need to be connected together, creating an easy installation. Want to slope your trough like we do? No problem. Just let the experts at HM Company know. For more information, go to their website at draintroughs.com. That is draintroughs.com. HM Company Drain Troughs. They've been leading the industry since 1991. Check them out today.
Now, you were talking about not sharing the best practices with others. If you follow me on social media, you'll hear me say strategy is easy. Execution is really, really, really hard.
Yep, that's the key.
So I don't have an issue sharing our strategy. And that's not from a lack of humility standpoint. It's just, there are oftentimes, most people that would like to say lose weight, for an example, you could easily find a strategy to do so. It's not hidden. You Google it and find 1,000 options. Actually doing it is significantly more difficult. And the upside towards that communicating between what are perceived as potential competitors is massive. And that's where, you mentioned I'm in the distributor world. So the company I work for, it's EVI. We're publicly traded. And we have 29 distributors across the U.S. And I have responsibility for sales and revenue at 12 of those distributors, primarily in the Southeast. But the reason I bring that up is you mentioned the local laundromat owner that might not want to share with another one out of fear or concerns. It was this very similar what I'm finding in the distributor world. So a distributor, the way they did something, and they would maybe share it with a distributor across the country that sold the same brand as them. But they definitely would not share it with someone in the same market. They wouldn't share it with somebody that sells a different brand out of fear of what might happen. So what ends up happening is that distributor stays stagnant. The market stays stagnant. The end user experience stays pretty stagnant. Where I've been blessed in my 29 months with EVI in this industry is with 12 different distributors, and almost every brand, I get to see the upsides of different ones, the downside of others, and we get to share that information to where we can say, hey, I see you're doing this. Had you ever considered that? And we now have an audience to grow from each other. So from a distributor standpoint, we can get better when we tap into other folks similar to us and take the best practices.
How did you get them past that unwillingness to share? How did you get them to not see each other as competitors, even if they're in the same market or close to the same market?
Sure. I don't know if we've got them completely past that idea. What we have got them to realize, though, is there is an upside by communicating together, in that we can both rise together. So if you sell a different brand for a different distributor in the exact same area, you probably won't be best buddies with your competitor. However, you can learn together, you can share resources, we share service teams, we share install teams. If we can make the end users experience better, we cross-pollinate those resources. So it's painting the vision of what if it did work. So they used to be competitors. Now we're in the distributors in the same market. And what if we were able to take the best of each of our companies? What could we do for our customer base? And if we make it about the customer and not about the distributor or the salesperson, that's where you really get the cool synergy and the upside.
I'll tell you, as someone who was very blessed to stumble into this industry, not have a clue what I was doing, and I'm not a fan of the word luck, just so we're clear. But it is real. I just think it's overused. But I was very, very lucky to the first thing that I did before I even closed on my first store was found a great distributor. And I had no idea how valuable they were. I had no clue. I did value them, but I did not understand the level of it. And I still to this day attribute a solid 50% of my success to finding that distributor, but not just finding that distributor, finding the right distributor, finding a distributor that saw me not transactional, saw me relational, and was playing the long game and said, if we get up every day and obsess over making you, the independent owner, successful and profitable, everything else will take care of itself. And so I was very blessed to have that opportunity to not appreciate it as much. I always appreciated them, but not as much back then as I do today. And part of my voice is to share that with the industry. Owners, distributors are not your enemy. Distributors, you're not competing with other distributors. You're competing with yourself. And even though I'm not a distributor and have no experience in distribution, I now know hundreds of the best distributors in the industry. I drive a lot of business to them. Don't ask anything in return other than take care of my client, take care of my friend, treat them the way that HM treated me. And I believe, this, our platform is all built on a backbone of elevating the industry, the rising tide lifts all boats type of mentality. And I absolutely believe that this industry is really, really ripe for some amazing things. And it's because more and more people every day are seeing that, once again, to bring you into the industry, quote unquote. I love that we are attracting, I'm aware of it, but I love that we are attracting people like yourself as recently as 3 or 4 years ago. Because there was a time 10, 15 years ago when people like you, rock stars that we wanted in our industry, would get a job opportunity. I know this for a fact. They would take a peek at the industry. They would do some research on the industry and they'd be like, yeah, I think I'm going to go over to this industry.
Something more glamorous.
Partially because they believed that it was an impenetrable wall, for lack of a better term. They were like, I think it'll take me 10 years to get my footing. And who wants to work that hard for?
And so my entire paycheck, everything I'm evaluated on is distributor based. But hear me, I love manufacturers. I have no issue at all with manufacturers. They are so good at what they do. And we're blessed to have half a dozen that are really, really good at making equipment.
Agreed.
It's just about functioning and where you're best at. In the sense, so in my previous life, I talked to you, I was in the janitorial and packaging distribution. We were vertically integrated. We owned a manufacturer and we distributed. Now, we attempted to want to go manufacture direct, sometimes regularly, because it made sense financially.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, we're going to make more money. And then you know what the customer thought? The customer thought, wow, we're going to get a better deal.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at a spreadsheet, it makes complete sense. But in our industry, that last mile, that last delivery of the equipment, the person that fixes the equipment, the warranty part that goes with it is so infinitely valuable that potential savings on the spreadsheet doesn't end up lining up into real life. So I love manufacturers. We as a distributor would be nothing without partnering with the best ones. But there's a reason distribution is here. And it's because, so EVI specifically, our company, we have 450 service technicians across the country. And we would probably take another 100 if we could hire them tomorrow. And so we say that is, as a manufacturer, those resources don't follow along with them. So manufacturing partnering with the best distributors, customers partnering with the best distributors, that's where that sweet spot is that you're speaking of, Dave. So I appreciate you acknowledging that. And that's why I'm excited to be in this industry and get to work directly with the customer base.
If you're thinking of getting into business for yourself, I have something I think you'll find useful. Hi, I'm Dave Menz, owner of the best-selling book, Laundromat Millionaire, The Grit to Elevate an Industry. I've been in the laundromat business for over a decade, and I've grown it from one janky location to 4 high-quality laundromats with over 30 employees on our team. Don't believe me or think I'm just another goofball scheme on the internet? Go ahead, Google my name, Google me, and even check out my podcast, The Laundromat Millionaire Show. Truth is that I get you're skeptical, and I would be too, but hear me out for a second. Back in 2009, I started with about $30,000 in cash, and then I leveraged myself into a multi-million-dollar operation using laundromats as the vehicle. And now I want to share some of the things that I've learned while helping other laundromat owners and expanding my own businesses with you. Looking for a get-rich-quick or passive income business? Well, this isn't the business for you. Looking for a business that is flexible, stable, cash flows well, and is recession resistant and is needed in every community in the country, then I've got you covered. And what you're looking for is a modernized laundromat. Nope, not just any laundromat, but a modernized laundromat. Just look around in your local neighborhood. Look at the local laundromats around you. It's likely in bad shape, and it's really not serving anyone very well. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you want to learn more about my course and my coaching program, just click on the link for more information. But let me warn you, while the transformation in your community and your life are for real, so is the work. That's right. This is a real business with real investment and real work involved. But man, just imagine how worth it it'll be when you look in the mirror and realize that you're a laundromat millionaire.
I think I'm glad you actually said that, because I think that's a hot topic in our industry. And especially, I think maybe some of the older people too, but definitely the people that are new to our industry. It's that, why do I have to go through a distributor? Why can't, if I know I want this, and this machine, why can't I just go directly to the manufacturer and get those machines? And I know you mentioned some of the support there. Would you like to expand upon that? Why are distributors necessary? Why are they valuable? Is probably even a better word.
So when I was looking at the next industry that I wanted to go into, after being somewhere for 15 years, I wanted to go into something that, I'm going to put air quotes around this, that was Amazon proof. Meaning it doesn't involve just shipping a box somewhere and sitting it. That there's some amount of expertise that is not just needed, but necessary to get full functional. So as an end user, in the laundry equipment world, you can think, I know I want 1030s and 40s, and you think you know what you want because it fits, but you may or may not understand completely on the utility side of what's going to be happening, or more importantly, is the turn side. When you can put the right equipment in there and change what the turns take place, that value to you is it's huge when done correctly. So yeah, theoretically, is you could order the equipment you wanted, you could get your own install team, you could set it up. But outside of being that top 0.25% in the industry that knows exactly what to do, it's going to be a pretty big challenge. Not to mention, when you're talking about rigging and install crews, if you don't trust them with your life, almost, you're very unaware of what you're putting in the vented world. Most often it's your own personal cash. So the note is under your name. And the idea of putting that on someone that you don't completely trust with a background behind it is a high level of risk. So to say it couldn't be done wouldn't be true. Of course you could do it. But my question would be, why would you want to take on that risk and give up the potential upside of what distribution can bring? However, there are a lot of bad distributors out there. And Dave, you probably appreciate your current distributor a lot more now as you've gotten deeper into the industry and heard horror stories of bad.
For sure.
Because there is a markup and there's an additional cost. And if you're not getting that relationship and that long-term partnership, I could see where someone would see distribution as something they'd want to get away from. So hear me say, that doesn't mean we're all good.
Yeah.
You know, of the 29 businesses that EVI were a part of, there's certainly areas where we've struggled, but we are super committed to improving that long-term by learning from everybody within our family of distributors.
I love it. So I want to tap into your knowledge and observations from outside the industry in the last 29 months. When you came into the industry, this is just a collective statement, not even your specific distributors. You know, I see you at conferences, which I think is a great sign. Once again, I don't think people value those and the networking that happens enough. Being active on LinkedIn and things like that, I think this is vitally important. But when you came to the industry from a strictly distribution seller, you knowing distribution as well as you did, but not knowing this industry, you see it through a really, I would think you would see it through a really clear lens. Where did you think we were lacking from distribution in the industry, and how far do you think we've come in your 3 years that you've been here? Think we have a long ways to go?
So I guess without saying we have a long ways to go, if we think about it as a distributor, the number one thing we need is to have the right equipment at the right price at the right time. So with that involves data. And when you go to a lot of distributors, they haven't necessarily used data in the best way to decide what to warehouse, what to price it at, and how to plan your installs out. It's been driven by one of two things: either the customer thinking they know what they want in a just-in-time order, which they end up not getting a great experience, or 4 different salespeople that sell 4 different ways. So they would sell different SKUs and different products. So as a distributor, you end up with a warehouse full of the wrong inventory, potentially at the wrong price, and not being ready to go at the right time. So overall distribution is looking at data. What have we sold in the past that's correct? What do we want to sell into the future? And then how can we market to customers in our geography so they recognize, this is going to sound bad, they think they know what they want.
Agreed.
And they very well, and I would never tell a customer they're wrong. That would not be disrespectful. But if we know there are certain SKUs that are significantly better for their goal of serving their customer and making more money, it's up to us to communicate that to them. So if we have the right inventory and we can communicate it to the customer in the right way, they will receive things faster. They'll be happier. We'll make the amount of money that we need as a distributor to be happy. And it's a great, great partnership. But that really falls off the rails when data is not used to determine inventory.
Yeah. Do you find with being a bigger network of distributors that helps with that issue? Because I would think just having more locations, let's say, this location has too much of this SKU, but they need that SKU over this one. You can do a lot of like product moving among the different distributors. Does that kind of help with that?
So I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to answer in a way that speaks to the laundromat owners. So imagine, you own two stores, and then you eventually get to where you own 6. That works really, really well if all 6 of them are on the exact same systems. If they're on the same systems with the same SKUs, with the same items, you get that benefit.
Yeah. We do that with our stores. We do that with like our employees, even are trained on all locations. So
but if you don't, you lose out on that upside. So what I mean by that is if I have 12 distributors and I've got this infinite amount of inventory, but our systems aren't set to communicate between all 12 distributors, that upside to the customer is lost. So it's, the inventory is great, but it's the systems and the ability to communicate that's even more important. So EVI, we publicly traded, 8 years ago, started purchasing distribution. And in doing so, we gained, first off, the number one most valuable thing we could have in when purchasing a distributor is the human capital. The expertise that comes along with that distributor is more important than literally anything that we can get.
Expertise in their relationships to that community.
Huge, huge, huge. That local human, when I say human capital, I feel weird saying it, but what I mean is those people have put so much time, effort, energy, and when that comes to us, that's more valuable than anything. The problem, though, is if we don't have systems that align all those distributors, it doesn't benefit everyone. So what we've been having to focus on at EVI for that end user experience is upgrading our systems so that when you're in Cincinnati and you say, I'm out of X, that distributor can say, let me check down in Baton Rouge. Oh, they've got X. I'll have it to you in 36 hours. And so that is what we're currently building. It's happening as we speak. But that number one goal is if we can get it to you at the right time, at the right price, it's massively huge.
So let me ask you this. I always tell people, I'm curious your thoughts on this, and I don't mean it literally, just so we're clear. I tell my clients all the time when I'm talking to coaching calls and things like that, I say the problem with distribution and our, meaning the laundromat owners, perceived or misconceived view of distribution is I put distributors into three categories. The first one I'll use different terms for, but for lack of a better term, we'll just call them a dealer, right? Trunk slammer, right? Is a term a lot of people use. Borderline predatory, right? Not interested in anyone's success, including their own long-term. They're just interested in either meeting their goals or making as much money as possible today, even if it's at the expense of someone else. Of course, they give the best ones a terrible reputation, and those exist. I don't know if it's a third, but if we break them into a third, we'll say a third of distributors are that type of mindset.
Okay.
A third of them are what I call commodity-based, or transaction, right? They want to make as much money off of you as quick as they can, but they do care about your success. They're just still not thinking long-term. This is a mentality of how they operate their distributor. They will be there for you. They will pick up the phone. They will answer the call. They will help you lay out your store. They will do everything a distributor should do.
But they might put in too many machines because that's more money for them.
They might put in a couple too many 20s or something like that. Nothing that we would call predatory. They, are trying to help you out, but they're very transactional, right? And at the end of that, let's call it a new store build or a retool. At the end of that, when they've sold you $800,000 in equipment and the check clears and the 30 days is up, good luck getting them on the phone, right? Because they're on.
Unless you're ready for new machinery.
That's right. Unless they think you're building another store, right? Very transactional. The transaction, they are doing their job, and when it's over, it's over. I always say that's roughly a third. And then there's the HMs of the world, right? Who I give all the credit in the world. They're playing the long game. They've been playing the long game for 50 years, and they get it. They get it that you've used the word several times already in this call, partner. They get it that while they may not have equity in my company, that my success determines their success. But that mentality only works if you're playing the long game. If you're playing the short game or just trying to pay the bills or feed the babies today, or you're selfish or greedy or only care about yourself and you don't care about the betterment of the industry and the communities that we owners serve, et cetera, then that stuff isn't important to you, right? That's how I break down the distributors. And I always tell laundromat owners and even new ones, I tell them, if you get the wrong one, you're going to think really bad of distribution. If you get the middle one, you're going to think very transactionally, right? Because that's how they treat you. So that's how you treat them. Well, if I go to you as a distributor and I treat this relationship as very transactional, then my goal is to get the equipment that I believe I need, the information that I believe I need, as cheap as possible. And when the relationship is over, meaning the transaction is over, I see no value, right? So one of them is predatory, one of them is transactional, and then the last one is a partnership, is what I refer to as. What I believe and what I dream and what I'm going to work until the day I die is that every distributor understands that it's best for you and it's best for us owners. It's ultimately best for the communities we serve if you are in a partnership with us, right? And that's my goal. The funny thing is, to share a story real quick, when I first got in the industry, all I knew about distribution was HM, right? And I was like, man, doesn't matter if I buy 80 grand in equipment from them or 800 grand in equipment from them, they're still there for me tomorrow, right? And as soon as that transaction is over, they'll still pick up the phone the next day. And it's like, hey, I got a question. Do you know any owners that are pick up and delivery? Yeah, I could shoot you an email, give you a list of people, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, I'm not buying the equipment. I didn't even call them about buying equipment. They want me to be successful. And it's a big part of why they still don't do much marketing to this day, because they're just really good at relationships. I believe that that's what we need more of and less of in our industry. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Do. And you're potentially going to think it's a hot take.
I love hot takes. I love to be challenged.
It might push you a little bit. But first off, before we get to the partner, you talked about the dealer, the trunk slammer. I was taking notes when you were talking. So oftentimes they have no service even available. All installs are through a third party. They can even be lower cost because they have lower operating costs as a business. The commodity transactional, they see service as a necessary evil.
Yep.
They think they
Great.
have it to do business, but they don't actually care about it very much. Now, your third partner, who I agree with everything you said, I'm not even going to say in theory, but the idea of it, I think, is even better than the long-term success of it. So let me tell you why I feel that way. Oftentimes, partnership dealers, they're so unbelievably focused on the customer and doing things the way they've always done them. They don't bring systems involved to make what they're doing scalable, to service the customer in a scalable way. So they end up being stuck at a certain size. They can only service a very small little area. So that great partnership heart that they have is felt by fewer people. Secondly, costs continue going up to run the business, and they still expect a certain margin to justify that service level they have. And they're slowly but surely getting further and further away from the dealer or the commodity guy. So that partner, in my opinion, is going to slowly start getting less and less deals. Revenue might even go down because they're getting so far away cost-wise to justify that service level without the systems. So my concern is for that partnership distributor. Is that their heart is great. I mean, everything you're saying is perfect. I don't disagree with a minute of it. But their ability to get bigger and stay relevant is going to be harder and harder. So that's where, from our perspective, when we go through acquisitions, we desperately want to find that partner whose heart is in the right place, but they need two things. They need capital and they need systems. You add finances and good systems to that heart of a distributor, massive, massive upside.
That's the future of our industry.
But we better get it done before that delta difference between the cost of the partner and the low cost of the dealer trump slammer is so far, partner doesn't stay in business.
Yeah, because the distribution will die.
Because distribution will eventually move to box moving.
Yeah.
And there'll still be the niche, but they won't need that last bit that you're speaking of.
Yep.
That's
great points.
concern for, I'm going to say, you're not over serving your customer. You're serving them the right way, but it starts to be perceived as over serving.
Yeah. Well, there's some that believe that. There are some distributors, that's why they don't do it. They're like, yeah, that all sounds great in theory, Dave, but it affects my bottom line. I got to move on to the next deal, big sale.
You got it. So the idea, when you look for a distributor, you want to look for the partner, but I also would ask you to look at, and certainly they're not going to share their balance sheet with you, but talk about what their future is. What's their growth look like? What's their online plan? What's their ability for any customer portals? Little things that can make the ability to scale that great part of that partner distributor without having to be done purely in the way they've always done it.
Yeah.
I think this too, that very much translates to laundromat owners as well. And that, some laundromat owners are, oh, I just come and collect the coins. Like, it's just got to be clean enough. It's got to be working, whatever. And some of them are very transactional. Like, they'll do some advertising. They care about the customer to some extent, but only to the extent that they bring money in. And then there's those owners who love their customers. They love their community. They want to make this big impact. And I see this and the same thing a lot of times with Dave's coaching clients and with people that come to our workshops. It's that scaling part. You love it so much, but you want your hands in it. You want your hands in everything. And that limits your ability to scale because you're not building those systems and those teams and empowering your employees to take on some of that love of your customers. Like, you just want to do it all.
When I got in the industry, I didn't know most of what we're discussing right now, but I did have the heart from day one. And I can tell you the first thing I figured is a one-man show, which is literally what it is. First thing I said is I got to figure out how to do it myself, right? Once I figure out how to do it myself, then I figure out how to scale myself. Because otherwise, I'm only as good as far as I can go, as hard as I can work. And I was willing to work hard, but I knew I couldn't replicate myself. I think the same thing applies to distribution. Scalability is a word that I beat that like a mule in our workshops and our coaching and things like that. And I always tell people, if you don't want to scale, if you just have one laundromat and you have no desire to scale, okay, that's fine. Then maybe these things don't apply. But if you don't scale, then somebody else is going to scale around you, and you're probably going to find yourself compressed even in your market, just as a single store operator. But there are too many people that don't want to scale, so that's not usually much of a conversation. Fantastic stuff. Fantastic. What else do we have?
So that kind of pivots, the whole idea of leadership and building a team, building systems. And I know that's what you have a lot of background in too, is leading a team, leading people. What can you tell us about your experience as a leader? And then also, if you can even pivot the advice you give distributors as far as leading, and then the advice you would give laundromat owners as far as leading and building a team.
So overall leadership in general, it's, if you think about where your heart is at in doing it. So oftentimes leaders will want to make leadership about them and how smart they are at what they do. What I mean by that is there's many times I can come up with a fantastic process and structure, and I know that it works, and I want to go take it and give it to a distributor and say, you need to do this. But the truth is, me telling them that ends up being a little bit about me. It ends up being about me and what I think. Where in reality, my job as a leader is more important is to understand them and their business. So I have direct influence over 12 different distributors in the Southeast. And those 12 different distributors, although they have laundry equipment, service people, salespeople, install people, AR, AP, they're arguably the same. They're all ran significantly different. And it's my job to be the best leader, to not tell them exactly what to do, as it is to listen to them and understand them and help guide them to a better version of where they're at. So we can't expect to treat everyone the same. So life's not fair. I treat everyone different. I have certain distributors we hold super accountable to metrics. I have other distributors we haven't spoke about a metric in 2 years. And it's not because I don't feel like I personally I have a way to run that distributor, but it's not about me. My job is working with them to guide them where we want to go. Of course, we come up with best practices, but when you're a leader, if you can pull yourself out of it, when you think about, why am I helping this person? Is it about me, or is it truly about them? And people want to use the word servant leadership. And you talked about, you don't like the word lucky. I think servant leadership can be overused. Well, I'm a servant leader. I do everything for everyone else. I personally want to be really successful. I'm a leader that wants the teams I work with to be super successful. But in doing so, it's not about me, them being successful. So that would be the first piece at a high level, is thinking about where your heart is at in doing it. And then second, from an overall execution standpoint, the leader that answers the most questions loses. So follow me really quickly.
Okay.
If I'm a leader and my job is to develop a department or a team or a building or a new operation, I am the subject matter expert initially. But my job is to not always be the subject matter expert in their department, in their area, or what they do. So if you open a new store and you have your operations manager, every time they come to you and they say, hey, I've got this problem, what should I do? If you answer that question, you personally as a leader think, wow, I really helped Bobby today. I did a good job. Well, the next time Bobby comes back to you with a question, you answer it again. Eventually you train Bobby. You are the person to answer questions that he has. So the leader loses when you answer too many questions. What I mean is, when Bobby comes to you with a question, instead of answering it, just say, Bobby, I just heard about this. What were you thinking? And more often than not, when someone asks you a question that's a direct report, they already have an idea what they want to do and how they want to do it. They're just looking for affirmation or you to say you agree. And one of the best things we can do as a leader is say, you know what, that's a great idea. You should run with it.
So it's
Now,
that whole empowerment.
You're empowering them through, now I want direct reports and different business units to come ask me questions all the time. Let's talk through those. But it's not my job as a leader to answer it. And I spent probably my first 10 years in leadership thinking, I'm going to be the smartest guy. I'm going to help them so much by answering every question. So my heart was right. And that's the biggest challenge, is if you're listening to this call, your heart is right wanting to do it for them. Your heart is right wanting to tell them what to do, but you're actually holding them back. And when you realize that, your leadership can go to that next level as you learn to step into it.
You become less of a manager, more of a leader.
I feel like that's true. And I know you have kids too. I feel like that's true in parenting too. I think as parents, we're tempted to like just give our kids the answer and tell them what to do and tell them give them advice, advise them or whatever. But I think there's a lot to be said for asking them questions instead of guiding them through questions and getting them to think along the paths and making it more of a discussion and helping them come maybe to the right answers, but helping them think through it. Because then I think that teaches them to think through that themselves. Same thing with employees. You're doing the same thing with employees, guiding them maybe through the process of getting to the answer that you approve of, because that is your business, but they're feeling powerful and you're teaching them the process of thinking through, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I tell my coaching clients all the time that my goal isn't to answer your question. My goal is to teach you how I came to the conclusion of the answer so that you could take that exercise and make your own decisions. And they're always surprised by that. And I even tell them in the beginning of coaching sessions when they're new clients and things like that, I say, look, I'm here to tell you I don't have all the answers, but I can promise you together that we'll figure them out. And my goal isn't to give you the answer. My goal is to teach you how I came up with the answer so that you can come up with that with yourself.
Well, here's a real live example. You brought up kids. My daughter's not particularly great at cleaning her room. And if she's having a friend over, we want her to have her room cleaned before her friend. Well, there's been times, I'm going to use my wife as an example, but I promise everyone on this call has thought that same thought. It's just easier if I do it myself. The truth of the matter is, my wife or I could go up there and clean that room in 10 minutes and be done. And if we ask my daughter to do it, there's a high probability she's not going to do it right. She's not going to do it the first time. She's going to fail at it. And it might take, half hour or an hour of our time to teach them. And it might take 3 or 4 times. But eventually, my daughter is going to learn what it means to clean your room before people come over. And in leadership, we're all so busy. We don't have enough white space on our calendar that instead of our goal being teaching and guiding the people we work with, it's getting the task complete. So our goal, we have to step back, and white space on your calendar, this is maybe another podcast, is massive. I am the worst at setting a busy calendar. I'll be back to back to back to back all day. I have no white space to actually think, coach, or develop. So we have to put that on so that when people we work with come with a question, we're in the right headspace to not do it for them.
I'm reminded, and I don't know where these quotes came from. They're just in my mind. They're not my quotes. They're not original. So I wish I could give credit. 2 quotes. One of them is the best leaders' number one goal is to build leaders. Probably a John Maxwell thing, I would guess. Sounds like him, but I'm not positive. And then one of them that stuck with me a long time. I think this might have been Reagan, but I'm not positive on that either. It's amazing how much you can accomplish in life when you don't care if you get the credit.
Mm-hmm.
And those 2 things, I think, really go a long way towards a lot of what you said.
Yeah, it's developing leaders is difficult. Managing someone is a set. It's a set. Hey, this is the structure. You do this, you don't do that. And I'm sure that happens. But leadership is developing them to think in a different way. And then that's why it's special when, if you're on the call listening, you can probably think of a leader you've had in your life that made a huge impact in your life. And I'm willing to bet it had a lot to do with not even what they taught you, but how you felt when you were around them, how they saw you differently than you saw yourself. And on the flip side, you can probably think of that bad leader you had too, that was constantly criticizing you, that was never on your side, that you never felt. So feelings are fickle. I can disagree with someone's feelings, but feelings, they are what they are. And more often than not, the quote people recognize is they forget what you say, but they don't forget how you made them feel. And that is a big deal, to where I was asked once by a mentor, what's your leadership philosophy? And, I thought about it, and something he told me I thought was interesting was, he said, if you can't quickly give your leadership philosophy, you're probably all over the place and the people reporting to you are a little confused. But if you know what your leadership philosophy is, you now how you're going to act and how you're going to be. And what most of the time people want that work with you is to know what to expect. They don't need Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde different each time. I want more than anything the team that I work with to know I care about them. I care about you, more than just your job. If something happened in your family, that's interesting to me because you're a person.
Mhm.
Second, I want them to know that exactly what their job responsibility is. At the end of the day, the week, the month, I want you to know if you were successful or not. And I don't need you to ask me about it. Like, you know exactly. And then third, I want them to know what we are going to hold each other accountable to. Not me hold them accountable, because for me to actually help them, there's probably some things I need to do on my end to get roadblocks out of their way. If they feel cared about, they know the exact job to do, and they know the accountability that we are together on. It usually makes leadership not easy, but simple in the mindset of what my goal is that day.
I love that. That framed it very nicely. And I think that is also very transferable from any form of leadership. You know, whether you're a member of a club or an organization, whether you're a parent, whether you're a laundromat owner, whether you're a managing distributor.
I'll throw one thing out there, and I'm backing up a little bit in the leadership category. I always used this is probably going back 10 years now. We had accomplished a few things, but had a long ways to go. And I reached a point where I could only work so hard, right? And I used to tell myself every day, Dave, no matter how hard you work, you're not scalable. And so the first thing I had to do is learn how to be a leader. But the one thing I figured out is I couldn't create leaders first. I had to create managers. And a lot of times I'm dealing with, entry level employees that I'm trying to teach to be a manager. So I would tell them, little cliches like, hey, before you call me, I want you to call me. But before you call me, I want you to think, what do I think Dave's going to say with this problem? And my team, still to this day, it's like a running joke now. It's kind of cliche, but for years they used to joke that they were going to get what would Dave do bracelets instead of what would Jesus do. What would Dave do bracelets? I was like, don't. I would kill you. But I used to joke with them. What do you think I'm going to say? I want you to guess, because the more accurate you can get to what you think I'm going to say, the less you need to call me. Because once we know what the our core values as a company is, how do we make decisions? It's not about Dave making a decision. How does Dave make decisions? I want you to think in that way. And over time, we have built an amazing team of management and leadership in a small retail chain of laundromats in Cincinnati, Ohio, that can make these decisions and not call me for months. And every time they make the right decision, because they know how I would make the decision. And then, of course, part of it is putting the right people in there with the same core values as you, who are aligned. And when you explain to them why we make decisions this way, then everything eventually always points up to God. And they agree with that philosophy in their life, then it becomes really sweet. And that's when you become scaled.
And I would like to add on to it too. So everything you said about helping them to become leaders themselves and empowering them to make decisions is, I think, the next level of team building. And this is something we really focus on in our workshops, is making it to where you don't have so many decisions. And that goes into those systems and that documentation, like not just empowering them to make decisions, but making their lives easier, and there's less decisions to make because those decisions were already made, months and months ago. Once you know that way works, document it, and then that's one less decision they even have to make and that you have to make. So
yeah, at a retail level, that's really powerful.
Yeah. And that's what becomes scalable.
It is. Awesome. Well, listen, Justin, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Before I let you go today, I just want to ask you one last question. If you made a comment back in the very beginning about owning a laundromat someday. And this is a big question, so feel free to take several minutes to answer this. I know you've been in the industry about 3 years, but if you were to build and own a laundromat today, what are, I don't know, let's call 5 things you do real quick. For the newbies that know nothing, they have no baseline, no information, no knowledge. If you were to build and run a laundromat today, operationally too, what are 5 things you think would be priority?
What steps would you take?
I'd have to understand the demographics on where I'm going first. Are there people that live there that use laundromats? And you could go through a number of different ways of determining if that's based on how much money they make, all the different pieces. I would first determine that. And then second, I would determine, what do I want this laundromat to feel like? Meaning, there are zombie mats out there that get a really bad name. And I'm not here advocating for a zombie mat, but there are situations where a zombie mat probably makes better sense than a sit-down coffee bar on the inside where there's children books everywhere, just based on what that looks like. So once you figure out demographic 1, are there people that are going to be in this area? 2, what do I want this place to feel like? And the third, that feeling is what's so huge, because that's going to help determine the size. Like what size of a facility are you going to need to have? Then also remember, this is a financial investment that you're making, and you're pouring this money into pieces of equipment that are expecting some level of a return. So you need to start to think about, what type of return do you expect? Meaning, somebody might build the biggest and best knowing that their return's not till year 2 when they sell the place. You might be in a position where you don't need the biggest and the best, and that's okay. So understand the return that you're expecting, because money is emotional. And this is a big decision that you or I would be making financially. And then the last piece, you've spoke about it so much, is choosing that local distributor. So if I, first off, knew I found a demographic that was great, I left distributor last, because running 12 distributors, I thought it'd be biased for me to say immediately, find your best distributor locally. We're going to talk about at the end. You personally can figure out a good area. You can have an idea or a vision for what a laundromat would look like. Then you could go through those steps. There is an infinite amount of information that's available that's out there free. However, I was speaking to one of the manufacturer's presidents, I won't mention the name, about how I believe this industry doesn't do a great job social media wise, highlighting what we do really, really well. There's a handful of folks like yourselves that do great. But as an industry, we can celebrate our wins and losses a little better and differently, and learn from each other.
Yeah, I think that's powerful.
I think that was all good. I will say one thing. I know you put the distributor last, but I will say, if you can find that great distributor, they help you with all those other things. And then also another thing is, make sure you also look at that competitive landscape. So not just the demographics, but make sure your market's got a need, like it's not oversaturated. And that kind of goes with the demographics, I guess. But I will say, a good distributor, they know their market, and they can probably expedite your process through all those steps.
I don't know who's been training this woman, but
I listen to him talking all the time.
Personally,
distributor is where you start. The distributor is where you start, guys.
and I feel more comfortable with you saying that
Sure.
as a person.
I totally get that. Totally get that.
But it is true in the sense that since you started the plug, there's a handful of guys on the team that I get to work with at those 12 distributors, that they can take any location and tell you almost to the dollar what it's going to make, how quick it's going to make it, how you're going to get your return on it, because they've built hundreds and hundreds of laundromats. So finding that person that you can look into, finding that resource is huge, huge, huge.
It's a cheat code. You just got to find that third. You just got to find that third. Top third. Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time. I know you are a super powerhouse busy guy. I'm confident we will have you on the show again on the future episode. But I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day now at the beginning of 2025. Hard to believe we're here when we record this, but we are honored to have you. Before I let you go today, I want to just give you a chance to kind of plug yourself. How can people find you, reach you, follow you, what you're doing in the industry? Guys, I'm not joking. I don't have guests on this show. I don't take this lightly when I invite people on the show. You're a powerhouse. I love what you're doing. I'm getting to know the EVI team and what they're doing, and I love the spirit of the organization as far as I can tell. But how can people find you?
Well, I'll tell you how you can find me, but first let me reframe what you're saying. First off, I appreciate the compliment, being called that powerhouse. The amount that I'm learning every single day is completely because of all of the amazing people within our distributors. I know very, very little. What I do know is I have lots of really, really, really smart people that have great ideas that I get to push and execute on. So I might be the one that's seeming like getting the quote unquote credit, but more often than not, the idea wasn't mine. The problem that we're fixing wasn't mine. It's just my job to push that. So this industry is all about people.
Yeah, it is.
And at EVI and Distributor, we look at who we want to acquire. Before we look at the P&L, it's what people are there and how can we gain them, because recreating someone is really, really almost impossible in this industry. So we're going to have the best people. We're going to give them financial capital and systems so that they can deliver better experiences for the end user. So you asked me a question in there and I got sidetracked based on changing how you worded it.
No, you're fine.
How can people reach out to you, connect with you?
The only social media I allow myself to use is LinkedIn. My name is Justin Clark. The company is EVI. I probably post, 5-7 times a week. The majority of the coaching I do on social media is nobody cares about your product, but they do care about you. So if you can invite people into who you are, that then shines light on your product. So that is the strategy I use on social is I want you to, get to know me a little bit, the good and the bad. And then that allows for a connection like this so true relationships can be built.
Love it. Awesome. Okay, so reach out to Justin on LinkedIn, guys. Justin, it has been fantastic having you here today. We thank you so much for your time. For everyone back home, Dave and Carla Minutes here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and our friend Justin Clark. We'll see you next time for another episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. Take care. So awesome.